Are you a homeschool mom with a baby or a toddler? Constant interrupter, right? Little tornadoes. How do you get the homeschool done and also keep that toddler or baby engaged or feeling loved or giving them what they need? I am an experienced homeschool mom who started homeschooling when my youngest was almost 2. And I remember this all too well. And so I have a lot of ideas, 18 in fact, for you, and we're just gonna get right into it. Mama's only one person, right? And actually, when I had a toddler, I only had 2 older ones. My oldest son was 3rd grade, and my middle child was going into kindergarten, and then I had a toddler. So I'm just gonna tell you all the things that I have either tried or ideas that were given to me, but I'm also, later in the video, I am gonna refer you to some very well-known, in fact, maybe famous homeschool moms and some of their suggestions, and even, yes, another video to watch. Not mine, but this famous homeschool mom's video. So the first thing, when you have a lot of little ones under tow, family subjects, do as much as you can together. Let's talk about read alouds. You want to be able to educate your older children while having your little one there. During read alouds, I had a basket of quiet educational activities that my little one could play with, and it was only for this time. We did not get it out at any other time of the day except during our Bible study and our read aloud time. So she always thought those activities were super fun. I'm just gonna call the toddler her, okay? So whether you have a boy or girl, I'm just gonna refer to the toddler as a her, okay? If you wanna have her at the table with all of you while you're doing school, but maybe you don't want her grabbing things off the table, or you definitely don't want her wandering around because you just don't trust her, right? Put her in a high chair, lock her in. But again, having activities that are like her school. Now, as you know, toddlers have really short attention spans. So again, maybe activities that are only for the school time. I did a homeschool supply video where I mentioned do-a-dot markers. Check out this video if you don't know what I'm talking about. But those markers are perfect. They can grip them like this, and they just make all kinds of big colorful dots, but maybe give them some school supplies, age-appropriate school supplies that could come out at that time, and the high chair can be like their little desk, but they are secured. So that kind of goes along with what my third idea was, which is age-appropriate school. So depending on the age of your child and what you might be able to have there to entertain them in the high chair. Doing school with you. Maybe your toddler is 3 years old and they actually can sit at the table and do some sort of school with you. There are all kinds of printables out there. We use the do-a-dot markers on those if they were like, big numbers that they could just color in or start practicing their letters. The Dollar Tree also has a lot of little workbooks that are just for learning your letters and your numbers and tracing those dotted lines, and those are for $1. Actually, I think those are also at Dollar General for $1. Let these little ones participate with you as much as possible. I know when my daughter was 2, she loved the science experiments. Whatever we were doing, she just wanted to be there with her big brother and her big sister, and she was watching it and taking it in just as much as they were. If you have a child that's a grabber or something, that may or may not work, but I know for my daughter, science experiments, watching them, she loved it. So just include them as much as you possibly can. So you may be doing read alouds that are chapter books, but maybe every other day do read aloud picture books. That way your toddler can sit on your lap while you're reading aloud and they can look at the pictures, your toddler or your baby actually on this one. They can look at the pictures and then help you hold them up for everybody else to see. So you can alternate with chapter books and picture books for this. Taking advantage of the nap time. Let me just tell you this little tidbit here. When I first started homeschooling, my daughter was taking a morning nap and an afternoon nap, and I kid you not, as soon as we started school, she cut out her morning nap. Like, I thinking,
I'm gonna have 4 hours during the day to get all the school done. It's gonna be easy peasy.
if you have a baby, fully take advantage of the naps. Get the schoolwork, make sure you schedule it in there during the nap time. If you have a toddler who's only got one nap a day, save the hardest things for you, Mom, during that time. So for me, when my youngest was only taking one nap and I knew what time it was, and I knew, it was approximately an hour and a half to 2 hours, and my toddler went down for her nap, that's when I did kindergarten with my middle child, because doing kindergarten and learning how to read and write, Mom has to be fully engaged to teach those skills. And then during my third graders' work, which was in the morning, of course, my kindergartner played with the toddler, entertained the toddler. They did little school activities together at a child's table, and my toddler was perfectly fine with that. She loved it. She had her little school with her sister. So some tips for occupying your baby or toddler and maximizing mom's time. This is not going to be a new tip for some of you moms. For me, I never did this until my third child, so I'm going to throw it out there anyway. If you have a baby, you need to invest in a baby wrap or like an ergo carrier or something to strap that child to you, so that if they just absolutely want to be held, you can hold them close, but you can still be hands-free. I'm not kidding. I never did this until my third child. So if you haven't discovered a wrap or some way to be hands-free while carrying your child, look into that. If you have a lot of kids especially, but even if you only had 2 older kids, establish a child rotation. Maybe you can figure out your homeschool schedule where there's some sort of time slot in the day where one of your other children plays with your toddler to entertain them. If you have a lot of children, I'm sure bingo, bullseye, benefits of having a large family. You could schedule each of your other children 20 minutes with the toddler to keep them entertained or to engage them in school so that you can have time with your other children. Another thing that I did, and I know a lot of moms do this, and that is to take care of your toddler and your baby's needs early on in the morning. Like fill up their love tank first so that they're not feeling like they need their mom time and they're having to wait till the end of the day. Take care of their needs first and then maybe do that rotation that I just mentioned. Also, if you have a toddler who sleeps in a little bit later, maybe you could start school a little bit earlier. Like if you have a toddler who maybe doesn't get up until 8 or 9, maybe take advantage of that. Maybe you have an early child who's an early riser. If you can't take care of your toddler and taking care of their mommy time before you start school, like say you start school at 8:30 or 9 and you start with Bible and you do your read alouds in the morning, so your toddler's kind of with everybody else, but maybe they haven't had individual mommy time. I did 2 videos recently, one about our homeschool schedule and how we fit in all the homeschool, and then I did another video explaining more specifically, how we execute the chores. Both of those videos I mentioned that we have morning chore time. So if you wanted to do a schedule similar to mine, where you take 20 or 30 minutes in the morning so that your kids can get some chores done, you could, Mom, use that time as your toddler time. So your other kids would be doing chores or maybe just independent homeschool work while you do your toddler time. So this goes along with mentioning activities that are saved only for school. I also had toys that were only to be brought out at school time. So I had the activities for during read aloud, activities for when they were at the table with us, but also toys that they could play by themselves with, I called them the STEM toys, but they might be things like dominoes or blocks. If your child's old enough, I've mentioned in several videos, some of my homeschool supply videos, about colored buttons. Like when my daughter was 3 or 4 years old, she loved just playing with the colored buttons and making designs. There's those Cuisinart rods, just things that don't do the thinking for you, but they could experiment with building or balancing. Another idea that I did was I created kind of my own homemade toddler busy bins. I didn't really make them into bins, but they were kind of like busy activities, super, super easy. So just off the top of my head, get yourself a big bag of pom-poms. I got them where they were large, they were small, but all kinds of various colors. And I would give my daughter, sometimes she just wanted to play with pom-poms and that was it. But I would give her a bunch of pom-poms and maybe set 4 or 5 little bowls in front of her. Maybe give her a big spoon, maybe give her some tongs. She would play with the pom-poms and just fill up the bowls for a long time. Like that actually kept her entertained for quite a long time. A colander that has the little holes in them. I gave her a colander with some pipe cleaners and showed her how she could stick the pipe cleaners in the colander. She might use the colander to just fill it up with pom-poms, so see, reuse. Empty egg carton is another thing she would like to put the pom-poms in. There are so many ideas like that on Pinterest, honestly. Super easy ideas that you don't have to go to a store and buy STEM activities. You might have these things already in your home that your toddler could play with. You could train your toddler that during school time at one point in the day, maybe one of their little classes, we called it lily pad time, where we would put like a blanket on the floor and you had to stay on your lily pad for 15 minutes, maybe give them some quiet books or some other little toy to play with, but they had to stay on the blanket. And if you can train your toddler that lily pad time is kind of special and staying on the blanket is maybe rewarded in some way. Also really handy for when you're going to other people's homes and you need your child to stay contained. When it's nice outside, my kids love water. I don't know about yours, but my kids loved playing with water. Now we actually had, I don't know if it was Little Tykes or Play School or some sort of one of those toy brands. We had a water table that was actually, a couple feet off the ground and you could fill it up with water, and they would just take like little measuring cups or balls and little squirt toys and they would play with that thing all the time. If you don't have one of those water tables, if you want to buy one, I mean, seriously, one of the favorite toys, even for when they were 5 and 6 years old. That thing entertained my kids for many, many years. But if you don't want to buy one of those, you could get one of those shallow, like storage bins. Something, I say shallow meaning like 6 to 8 inches, because you don't want it to be too heavy and you don't want it to be too deep and you don't want them to be able to tip it over either. But you could fill up 6 inches, 2 feet by 18-inch type storage bin. Fill it up with water, give them some teaspoons, tablespoons, give them some measuring cups, just things that you can find in your kitchen, plastic drink cups, and just let them play with water and do school outside. Do you have a picnic table or some sort of porch so your toddler can be outside playing with water, and then you can do school with your other children? Another very popular outdoor toy that your toddler would be safe to play in by themselves while you did school outside is a sandbox. If you don't have a sandbox, I highly recommend another just all-time, old school favorite toy. Just get a sandbox with a lid. You don't want cats in there. To ease the time commitment on mom, here are some tricks. If you are a nursing mom, save independent subjects for when you're nursing. Can your kids work on their independent math or work on, tracing the letters, whatever they can do independently while you're nursing? Can you do audiobooks? You don't have to read aloud every book. You can get audiobooks to do the reading aloud for you, and that can save mom's time if you're busy with a baby or a toddler, but your kids can still be fully engaged. Educational apps for when mom is tied up. There are just all kinds of educational apps. I've talked many, many times about the Extra Math app. I know there are all kinds of mathematical apps out there. There are phonics apps. Reading Eggs. That was one that we used a lot when my kids were younger. That is a phenomenal program. That one cost, I want to say it's like $50 a year or something like that. But Reading Eggs is an excellent choice if mom is tied up and your other children need to keep learning. Okay, my next tip, kind of goes along with this, consider the curriculum that you're buying. There is some curriculum that is going to be very, very teacher intensive. And there is other curriculum that will just be easier for mom. So when you're choosing curriculum, you need to consider your time that is going to be required for that. I just think it makes sense to do as many family subjects as you can together because that's going to ease mom's time. When my middle child was in kindergarten, we used My Father's World. I loved it. It had such engaging activities that my toddler enjoyed watching. Even my third grader, could enjoy them. And I saved it so that when my third child was in kindergarten, I could do it again. Well, by the time that my third child was in kindergarten and I started planning for that again, I realized I just don't have the capacity to do this again because it was requiring just a little too much time on me for what my then kindergarten really needed. Because really all she needed was she needed to start doing math concepts, she needed to learn handwriting, and she needed to learn to read. I could do that so much more simply than what My Father's World would have had me do. I loved that program again. It had such neat activities. If your oldest child is kindergarten or first grade, or you don't have a lot of kids in the older grades, I still would fully recommend that to anybody. But you just have to consider how much time you are going to be able to give to that particular child for that program. That's why, like right now, we use teaching textbooks for my middle child for math. That was partially to help free up some time for me to help my younger one. So I think this is my 16th tip. I've been kind of mixing some of them together, but I think this is number 16. If you have children that are very close in age, especially if you have a lot of children, but if you have children that are close in age, forget about the levels and just start teaching them together. Make them classmates as much as possible. Say you have a first grader who already knows how to read and you have a second grader who's struggling a little bit. Why can't they do the same language arts program and you can do them at the same time as much as possible, right? That's why, again, family subjects, why I always look for things that my youngest and my middle schooler can do together. Science, history, Bible, art. Okay, now my next several ideas are under the category of get help.
Not like psychiatric help or not like, medical attention, although if you need that, don't hesitate.
But that's not what I'm talking about here. Co-ops. That was one of the first things that I did when I was a brand new homeschool mom with a little one. Man, I loved the co-op day. Why? Because they usually had a program for my little one to go to. And so I could then go to the class with my older kids, and it's like I felt like I could actually relax, like I didn't have to worry about them as much. Now, I was occasionally assigned to those younger classes, and that was fine. But honestly, co-op day was like a break for me from baby and toddler. So co-ops can be a great support system that if you have a lot of kids to take care of, they can be a huge relief for mama. Can you get help during the school day? If you can afford a mother's helper, sometimes there might be maybe another high schooler, homeschooler that you know that's looking to make a little bit of money. Maybe you could hire them to come over for a couple hours once a week, twice a week or something. Mother's helpers are very popular. Also, if you have grandparents close by. When we did classical conversations our very first year, my youngest was not old enough to go and they didn't have like a daycare for her age. So my parents who live in the same city as me were able to watch her during the day. But I had also asked them every once in a while, can my toddler come over like one Thursday morning a week? And you could read books to her. You could take her to the grocery store with you. Like one morning a week would be huge. So if you have people in your church, retired women in your church who love babies, maybe you could make some sort of arrangement like that. Or maybe you could arrange for them to come to your house for a couple hours in the morning to help entertain your toddler. This is kind of a bonus tip for help, but I know people who have done this, and I've seen it also recommended in several homeschool books. If you can afford it, Can you hire a housekeeper or a house cleaner or somebody to come to your house even just every other week to help you with some of the deep cleaning chores? Whatever you can do to keep your sanity, Mom, because being a homeschool mom, especially with a lot of kids and especially with young kids, can be very overwhelming. Your mind has to shift in 10 different directions during the day. So if you can afford it, can you get help cleaning your house? Overall, you got to roll with the punches, right? I heard Heidi St John talk about when she was pregnant with her youngest, she was on bed rest and she had 6 other children to homeschool. Being on bed rest, how is she going to homeschool them? And she was from Washington State, which required yearly testing for her children. And she was just like, I'm on bed rest. All I can do is what I can do. She tells the story of how all she did was she did read-alouds, specifically the YWAM missionary stories, and she helped each of her kids with math. And she said, by God's grace, they were like throwing a prayer up, crossing their fingers when their kids went to testing. By God's grace, that was the best their kids ever did. Her point being, because every other year when she actually did all the things and her kids went to testing and they kind of just did what they were supposed to do. But this particular year, when they hardly did anything, they excelled. So her point was, God's grace is sufficient. And you can't even predict what God's going to do for you. He will fill in the academic gaps, I think is how she put it. So, Mom, all you can do is what you can do. Do every day what your hand finds to do. And trust God to fill in whatever gaps He needs to fill in. Your children, most of all, need attention and love, and they need to love learning, and they will figure out how to learn. In some miraculous way, they do it. So stick with me because I still have more tips, but I wanted to throw that in there. Before I refer you to this last person, I want to say this also. Plan for distractions, plan for interruptions. Determine at the beginning of the year, what is a successful homeschool day to you? If you don't get it all done, what will you be happy with? In my house, I determined if we do Bible and I get language arts and math done, that is success. Everything else is bonus. We strive for everything else, but if I get those 3 things done, then we had a good day. Remember, when your kids are young, you don't even have to do it all. Reading, writing, arithmetic. Get outside, go for nature walks. Your toddlers and your babies can do that. Science can be just fun and exploratory and interest-led. It does not have to come from a curriculum. You can get language arts through reading and books, and again, you can get it through audiobooks. You really do have a tremendous amount of flexibility with homeschooling. You just have to think freely about it. The very, very last tip is really a person and a video that I'm going to refer you to, and actually it might be multiple videos. I'm sure you've heard of Sarah Mackenzie. She's written several books. Teaching from Rest is probably her most famous book, her most popular book. Well, she has technically a YouTube channel, but she's not a YouTuber regularly. She has a few videos on there. They're not the best format. They're not the most highly produced quality videos, but the information in these videos is golden. And so I'm going to link them below, because if you know Sarah Mackenzie, she's an older homeschool mom now. I think her youngest kids might be approaching middle school age, and I think she has a graduate, so she's got a lot of experience. These videos are when she had toddlers. She has 4 videos, I think, on how she did homeschool and how she managed the toddlers. And I just found these videos to be some of the most helpful videos as I was trying to figure out how to do this homeschool thing. And for more homeschool help from this mama, check out this video on homeschooling multiple kids and this video for just practical homeschooling tips. And I will see you next time. Bye.